great.
It's good to meet you too.
Hope you're
Okay.
doing well. You're doing well. Okay,
I'm
let's.
glad we finally got together.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So many mishaps, missteps, but we got there in the end. And that's all that
Yes.
matters.
Yes.
Okay, let me start with sharing something, and we'll take it from there. Um,
Sounds good.
Talking to the walls like my mind is stuck in solitary. Until they talk back, got me feeling ghostly. I can feel the remnants of my mind dying to tell my stories. Pouring like maggots on these words, sometimes with extra gory. The sickle cell, the sickle slime and the lime, but they tell a journey so refined. The painful and the unkind, like you really know me. I've had to take time to elevate from the dungeons, no dragon story. Yet breathing fires, for they cater for the flames of the enemy. No story without a mountain to climb. No refine without the unbecoming of one's own self being unkind. The must I remind you to refine the likings of the inner child, to cater for the inner confines for me, where I can tell these failures and tries with a smile gracefully. And that's what I have today. So, any thoughts? Just want to get your thoughts if you have any.
Well, I have to say, I think I'm like a little bit of a poetry Luddite. But the thing that struck me was the very first part of it, where the walls talk to you. You talk to the walls, and the walls talk to you. And the part about this, well, you mentioned story in the poem.
Yes.
And read that part again. The part about the story. Read that little part again.
1 minute. Let me find it. You're talking about the I can feel the remnants of my mind dying to tell my stories. I think there's another part that mentions story.
Yes.
Oh, that part. Yeah.
Yes, that's the part.
You want okay, I'll start from just the first 4 lines. Talking to the walls like my mind is stuck in solitary. Until they talk back, got me feeling ghostly. I could feel the remnants of my mind dying to tell my stories. Pouring like maggots on these words, sometimes with extra gory.
Yeah, I love that. So, I mean, it's sort of Halloweenish, the story, but my mind is always um it's always thinking about stories. Like sometimes a movie that I've seen will come into my mind and I'll be thinking about it. Maybe I haven't seen that movie in a really long time, but for some reason it comes into my mind. Another thing that happens to me is I wake up in the morning and I have some random song in my head. I don't know why that is. So that part really struck me because, yeah, I think we have, I don't know if this happens to every single person, but, we have stories in our heads. Maybe it's stories about things that happened to us.
Yeah.
And just recently, I've been examining some old stories things that happened to me when I was in my 20s. And I went, it's time to give those up.
you've
It's time.
outgrown them in a sense.
Yeah. And also, the way I remember them probably isn't true. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's very good when it comes to stories as well, and what the mind, recites internally. I agree.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Oh.
Yeah,
Oh.
I kind of experienced that to a degree myself. I think it's a cultivation of different things, whether it's partly due to fear, what derived from different things like fear, happiness, and just different type of experiences, but it's all like interrelated. And so the mind just kind of cultivate in a way, perhaps making sense of it in a way that doesn't bring mental harm in such a way or anything like that. But you know, where there's emotions, there's attachment to. I think there's attachments. Whether it's happy but I think the more extreme the emotion, the more attached, the more you're likely to kind of hold on to it.
Right. It's like imprinted on your brain. Is that what you mean?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. The stronger emotion events stick with us longer because, or that we have some emotion about it. Because sometimes my husband will say, "Remember when we did blah, 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 blah?" And I'll go, "No, don't remember that." And he's like, "What? You don't remember that? You don't?" Because it really struck him on some level emotionally. And to me, I was totally detached. Or I jettisoned it because it didn't mean anything to me. You know, I jettisoned that info.
Yes, indeed.
Or it didn't mean as much to me. He does that quite often when we are talking about a movie, and he said, "Remember when we watched that movie?" I said, "No, I've never seen that movie." and he goes, "What? I thought we saw that together." Now he believes me when I say, "No, I've never seen that movie," because I remember movies a lot. But yeah, so that it's odd too. Sometimes, you know, parents or my siblings will say, "Remember this thing?" And no, I don't remember that thing. You know, so we all see the world differently.
Yeah, we do, and we hold into different things.
It's 18 hours.
And that's my laptop. But we haven't, you know, we've kind of skipped past the intro because I really wanted to just speak on things that you've kind of. Well, let me break it down. So,
okay.
Lucinda Sage-Midgorden. I hope I get that right. Welcome
you
to.
Got it. That's perfect.
It's great to finally have you on. I was looking forward to this. And just certain things, you have Sage Woman Chronicles, a podcast going on. You're a theater instructor, working on your second novel, and you have an online course as well, Saving the World One Story at a Time. I hope
Thank you for having me, Alex.
Oh, it's a pleasure, miss. It's a pleasure. I guess the first question I would ask is, with so much on your plate, I have to ask, how do you do it? You know, it's like, how do you go about getting so many things done with your schedule, miss?
Well, first of all, now I'm officially retired, so I'm not teaching anymore. So that's off my plate. At least I'm not teaching at the college anymore. So I do have the online course. Unfortunately, right now, it's sort of languishing. I have some people that I invited to be my test students, and some of them have not finished the course, that's fine. Because the reason it's languishing is because I decided to take my 3 years, actually it's 3.5 years of recordings of Story Power, my podcast, and put them on YouTube. So, but you have to, I only do an audio podcast. So you have to convert those so that they have some sort of visuals.
Yeah.
And I have 27 of them converted now. I don't have all of them uploaded, but I just published episode 84. So I have quite a ways to go yet before I have them all up. Because I'm trying to get them all finished by the end of 2023. And then I'll go back to paying attention to my course, which I only just published like at the beginning of this year. End of last summer and all of the fall, I was creating the videos and things for the course. The novel is kind of languishing at the moment, although I am close to finishing the rough draft. First draft of it. It's mostly all written, except it's 2 timelines. Most of the past timeline is written, but the it's the present timeline I have to add some things to.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I finish the YouTube project, because I'm trying to get my podcast out to more outlets.
Yes.
And so I'm even suspending my blog. Well, I have written a couple in the last couple of weeks of blog posts, but I suspended that too for a while. And I'm just concentrating on getting the ones for YouTube finished. And then I continue to produce Story Power for every other week. I continue to do that. And I also have special things that I do for my Patreon community, and I have an Apple subscription. So I was just editing the conversation my sister and I had yesterday about a classic movie that has something to do with what's going on in the United States right now.
Yes.
So, I try every day. I get up and I try to do 2 or 3 things.
That's the way to go,
And I do want to be retired a little bit too. Yeah, my husband is still working. He's younger than I am, so he's still working. But he should be finished by the end of May or early June.
Okay.
And retiring too. So he's my tech guy, and sometimes I need his help. I try not to bother him unless it's a real emergency when he's at work.
Understandable.
Yeah. So I'm trying very hard to to get things on like a schedule. So like every Sunday I publish my blog, and every other Wednesday I publish either a Patreon something or my Story Power. And then I'm trying to get the Apple subscription things on a schedule. And that helps me. If I have things when I'm like so I have to do that with the course too, like check in on my students every Monday or every Friday, or, So that's my goal for the next few months. Once the YouTube videos are up, is to get everything like on a schedule, because that really helps me if I know I have to do this. Yeah.
That's interesting. I must say, just reading about you, I got the impression that you are a warm character, and that's confirmed now. And I had to guess your work has touched many lives from the impression I've got. Also, just reading about you, that's what made me select this piece to read today, because I could tell you're genuine. You have a genuine love for stories, and I was like, okay, let's go more storytelling type of poetry.
Yeah.
That's what pardon me. That's what inspired me to kind of bring this quote to you today. Which brings me sorry, what were you gonna say?
Go ahead.
Which brings me to what I really wanted to ask you is that what makes a good story to you?
Oh, well, of course, this is the technical part of me. A conflict. You have to have conflict, because in real life, we learn the most when we are being challenged.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the technical part. The part of the other part for me is you have to have an emotional connection to what's happening with the characters. And I'm kind of a slow thinker. So maybe that's why poetry sort of sometimes goes over my head, because it has these really quick images, and I have to read it more often. When I was teaching English, I would tell my students poetry is like, it has all these symbolic images and emotions about it, and it's sort of like code.
Yes, indeed.
Kind of like code. And so I had them write poetry, and now we even published a little booklet of their poems. But I didn't shy away from teaching poetry because poetry is like if you, well, sometimes I sit down and I'll read the Tao Te Ching, just open it up, which is poetry. I mean, it's poetry, but you have to read it more, over and over before you get every. And so, since I'm really more of a visual learner, reading the words helps. If I'm just listening to the poem, I'm like, oh, wait, go back. I missed that part. Because I'm not so great with the auditory part. But poetry is emotional, visual art is emotional, dance, opera, all the arts are emotional. So now I have to say I'm a highly sensitive person. So if it has a lot of meaningless violence, blood and gore, forget it. I'm not watching that. Or I'm not reading that.
That's understandable.
Yeah. In fact, there is one book that I absolutely loved by Ken Follett. I think it was the first one, Pillars of the Earth, but it might have been the second one, where he describes this it was something they actually did to people, skin them alive. And he describes the whole process of skinning this person alive, of taking their skin. And it's like, sometimes that comes into my head and I go, I wish I hadn't read that part.
Yeah.
The rest of the book is really terrific, but I wish, because that image comes into my head and it's like, oh, I wish I hadn't read that part.
Like we mentioned before, the imprint.
What?
It's like we mentioned before about the imprint, on the emotional imprint that you have.
Exactly. Yes.
And
so
necessarily something you want to remember, like you don't want that impression on you. That's going to last for a while, at least.
Right. Yes. So there are certain movies that I know I will never watch, and people go, "You what, Miss? You've never seen The Godfather?" And I'm like, I don't want to watch that movie. I don't want those impressions in my head. Oh, but it's such a great movie. No. Well, maybe it is a really great movie. It probably is. I'm just not going to watch it.
I totally understand that. Are there any signs that tingles the spidey senses when it comes to stories that pops into your head or things of choice to read?
Yeah, I actually, my sister and her family and their friends across, their next door neighbor friends, and Barry and I are in this virtual book club group. And we just read a book called The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, I think his name is. And it's written for like middle grade or young adults.
Yes.
But it was a book that at the end I just kept thinking about it, because it starts off with this character who's fairly emotionally repressed.
Yeah.
And as the story goes along, he blossoms because he finds a loving community.
Yeah.
I'll say that's not really the situation. He is somebody who is supposed to go and evaluate orphanages.
Yeah.
Excuse me, that house magical youth. And they have these laws that separate the magical people from the regular everyday people.
Yeah.
And but he's a very caring person, and so when he goes on this special assignment, he just starts to fall in love with all these people on this island. And yeah, it was one of those. So I look for stories like that where at the end I just feel really great and I want to think about it more. I want to think about what's happened to the characters. And then I'm the kind of person who's like, oh, okay, what's their life going to be like after the end of the story?
Yeah. That's interesting. It sounds to me like it's a story where it's almost like your environment. You become you become a reflection of your environment in essence, from what you're saying, and he changed his environment, and so he had a chance to. Well, he changed as well, by the book, but also maybe he had a chance to kind of share. Um, maybe he had a chance to share a bit more of a positive type of side of him in a sense, because the environment didn't depict the place where it's almost like, oh man, I've got to be hard here, or I've got to be, you know what I mean, show a bit more of a callous side to me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes that matters as well.
Yeah, it really does. Just a minute, I'm gonna pause this because I'm gonna cough.
No worries.
I didn't want you to hear that. Okay. So yes, in fact, it shows in the very opening of this book, he is on an assignment where he's evaluating this. They call them orphanages, but maybe they're not really orphanages. But anyway, he's evaluating, and it shows his instinct is to touch a child, or praise the person who's running the orphanage or whatever. But there's this book of rules. It's sort of like a Bible, their Bible in a way, in the book, and it's thick, and there are all these rules about how to stay detached and how to not get involved with the people that you're evaluating. And that's against his instinct. You can tell in the very beginning of the book, that's against his instinct. So when he's sent on this special assignment by the, what do they call them? Extremely upper management. Then he's there, he's stuck on this island for a month, and there's nobody to give him instructions or to call him on the carpet for getting involved with the students, and it's just a natural outgrowth of who he is. So it's just this really great story, and I loved it, and I'll probably go read some more of that author's work because I thought it was really great.
You said something there. He's on an island, almost like, okay, not just an island literally, but an island in terms of like figuratively, because it's like, I find spaces like that, it forces you to be who you are, or almost think for yourself. Do you get what I mean? Internally, you grow as a person.
Right.
You actually to find a voice in a sense. Maybe that's part of the growth he went through as well, and maybe made him more of an individual, as opposed to being a reflection of his environment in a sense.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Because he had worked at this place for 16 years, and they described the office.
Yes.
And it's a row of 26 rows of desks, and there are so many desks in each row, and his desk is right smack dab in the middle of this whole like cube of
yeah. And for me, just all that breathes from in my mind is just uniformity. There's no individuality about it. You just fit in where you're supposed to be, and you become one. It's lack of a better word, it's almost sheepish in a sense. Do you get what I mean?
Yes, which is why when I first graduated from undergraduate school, I got a job in an office. It was a trade school, so they were training people how to work at the front desk at a hotel or an airline, or someplace like that. And I was the front receptionist to begin with, and it was horrible. I hated that job. I only worked there for 2 years, and then I said, heck with this, I'm gonna go get my master's in theater. And that was sort of like therapy from recovering from working at that job because it was so horrible. Toxic environment on top of it. But you know, the regimented, I just can't do that.
I understand. I understand. There was something else I wanted to mention. Yeah, you mentioned something about, oh man, just the I think the start of a story where it's almost like they're describing something about very visual, but it's very almost brutish, very, you know what I mean? I think you were saying something about blood involved in it. And what had me thinking that sometimes, like for example, if I'm performing, and you know, sometimes the pieces can be so deep, and you know, you would have somebody almost, you're tapping into so much emotions in a sense for somebody, and just that whole thing, it can be daunting, I think, for a crowd. For me, in my mind, if I'm just gonna be like, oh man, it's so daunting for me to just leave that person in that space. Do you get what I mean? So if I have the chance to do like say more than one piece, if I have time to do more than one piece, I like to almost refresh the palette in a sense. So I would start with something profound, but maybe I'll go a bit more playful, something more fun, something more of a word play. You know what I mean? Where people can just like, oh man, enjoy it away from the depth of emotions that comes with some of the profound stuff we see on stage.
Right.
And just almost refresh somebody. Because sometimes you walk away just feeling so heavy. I've from what I've observed.
Right. You know, it's not, excuse me, I don't think it's wrong to witness or to watch or to read books that are heavy. But if the book or the movie or the poem helps you kind of process that, you know, that's always good. Yeah, I mean, I watch movies that have violence in them, but the violence has to mean something if I'm going to watch it. So I'm going to use Denzel Washington's The Equalizer as an example. The violence has a purpose. He's trying to save people by using his special ops skills. So that's a different kind of thing. It's a heavy movie. The first, well, I haven't seen the third one, but the second one's also heavy too. But you know, he has a purpose. He's trying to help people. That's different than just, oh, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to kill all these people, and then that's the end of the movie.
I get that. And you know, you said something that resonated with me, because I think when I think of that movie, as much as it's supposed to be like, you know what, oh man, I'm action man, captain, save everybody, he does show a sense of vulnerability about the character that I thought is very different to a lot of action movies that you find out there. For example, like you could see certain things when he's just at the cafe, or any cafe, because he's in the cafe most of the movies, the sequels, and he's almost like very meticulous the way he plays certain things. Always put the tissue down, this, that. You get what I mean? And you can clearly tell he's OCD. And you know, he has certain ways where it's almost like he's such a habit of doing things one way, and he's just like, it's hard for him to break that cycle in a sense. So you know, it just it reminds me of just like, and it makes sense where he's almost always in pursuit of trying to find peace.
Right.
So,
well, he's also very vulnerable with the young woman, that first young woman that the prostitute, she's been human trafficked, I'm sure. And there's something about her that makes him, I mean, she's the one who says to him, I see a lot of widowers. She's the one who says that to him.
Yeah.
And, you know, he becomes vulnerable with her a little bit. And then his friend, when he goes to get permission to, you know, to save her. Yeah. Right.
Last, but this is the other thing I wanted to ask you. What are some of the facets that warms you to a character in real life or on paper?
Well, that's an interesting question. I'm drawn to people who think, who are open, who listen, who listen to other people, and but who, some of them can be really fun and funny and gregarious, because I'm not that really kind of person. But if they are, sometimes I'm really drawn to them, you know, somebody who's gregarious and fun. But yes, also reflective. Maybe they are also a reflective kind of person. Yeah, open-minded and wanting to grow and, you know, expand.
Yes. Yeah.
I am not, it's harder for me to be patient with people who, this is the way the world works and everybody has to think this exact way, and if you don't think this exact way, then something's wrong with you. I have a harder time accepting and being non-judgmental of those kind of people.
I can't blame you, to be honest. I can't blame you. I mean, I would imagine most writers are free thinkers, if not at the beginning. Certainly once you find your voice, you know, you want to almost be true to that voice. You want to respect that voice. And so you try your best to be candid with when you create, whether it's just, even if it's fiction, you want to be true to what you've created, you know, the universe that you've kind of created for yourself. So I think that's powerful. Now,
there are characters that I like that they present as very non-emotional, but if there's a lot of emotion going on underneath, I kind of like those kind of characters too.
Yeah, it's almost like there's more than meets the crust. You know, you can, I guess we go back to Equalizer. It's pretty much the same premise, where it's almost like he's not trying to show vulnerability. You could just see it, little remnants of it just flickering about the place if you really pay attention to the story, especially if you're a writer and you know writers like to leave little trinkets here and there, you know, for the respect, you know, just being somebody that respects your audience. And you know that you know they're gonna pick up on little things here and there, and it's almost like little crumbs where you can lead, or where you can kind of just mentally follow people, or follow the person that you know as the author. And I think that's something that people find fun about, you know, just reading in general. Especially if you're a fan of somebody's work and you know the DNA to their creating, and you can kind of follow, and there's a certain sequence, I would believe, that they would recognize being a fan of that person and being a savvy reader, you know. So that's interesting, I think.
Yes.
You know, the theme of the piece goes towards a story like type of writing. I wanted to take people on a journey about the good, bad, and the ugly, or the mere premise of such. Even in the moments of attrition, I think that tells a tale. Overcoming certain demons to meet yourself wherever you are, or meet somebody wherever they are. And you know, it might be reciprocal, but it might be one-way thing where you cause them to elevate, or they cause you to elevate. And let's be honest, everybody loves redemption stories. As you know,
Yes,
they come in many forms.
they do. Yes.
Although, in the same instance, the other thing better, the other thing better than telling one is to create one, in my opinion.
Yes. Well, I just like creating.
Well, yeah, you got me there. um, I'd imagine the essence of that would resonate to the reason, especially why you like creating and just what we're discussing. So it just makes sense. But yeah, just a few thoughts. You have anything else to share?
I don't. I have enjoyed our conversation so much.
Yes, it has been great, and I'm really glad we finally had this conversation. It has been fun. It has been fun for sure.
So keep writing your poetry.
Yes, I'll definitely well, like poetry it's always been with me. It's just I've never really it's one of the things I've never really paid attention or really noticed it as outside of being a hobby or something I just happen to do when I have time, or to pass time, or just to express for personal reasons or anything, until and things develop to the point where now I'm in the place where I want to give back, I want to share, I want to want to speak for other people in case they can't speak for themselves, resonate with different people, kind of thing, more togetherness as opposed to separation. So, but because of poetry, I have to give it credit, because I've evolved to be a person where I actually write stories as well. So that's why reading your bio, it resonates with me, a lot of things that you were speaking about, especially the story. And so because I know how to do both, it's like, okay, let me just bring poetry to stories and just have a conversation.
Well, poetry's a lot of poems are stories. They're just
Absolutely.
in code, as I told my students. Kind of a story in code.
Absolutely. But as you know, most poets are introverts, so by default, it's almost like, yeah, you want people to tell the truth, but it's almost like you really don't. You know what I mean? At the same time, it's like I'm telling the truth, but you're gonna have to work hard to really know what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's good. That's okay. That's great.
That's okay. That's okay. But you tend to grow, and eventually, it's almost like, okay, there's no masking this anymore. I'm all right just sharing and being candid about myself. I think it takes time to grow to that place, but it's a journey, as you know, and it's a pathway. So you really have to kind of just live it, and eventually you find yourself there for sure, I would imagine.
Yes. It's something you got to practice. You just
Absolutely.
practice.
You have to take it serious, and you have to live it. I write all the time, so that's how it resonates with me. So I'm sure we are kindred spirits in that whole premise for sure.
Yes.
But we're almost out of time, but I want to say thank you so much for coming on. It has been great having you, and hopefully in the future we'll have another chance to kind of converse again.
Yes, I enjoyed it very much. Thank you, Alex.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, miss.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. And yes, we'll be in touch regardless. So
okay.
take care.
Sounds good.
Yes, take care.